George Kilpatrick, inspiration for the nation, celebrating people we feel good about. Now, why haven't we had this brother on yet? What is up with
I
me? What's up with me? So let's just get that out the way. Temar Underwood is the artistic director of the Redhouse, has done just about everything in the world of theater, from writing, from producing, from directing, and singing. And so we want to learn all about that. And also, I want to know, have you found Jesus yet? And he knows what I mean. Right? That was pretty good, right?
That was good.
So Tamar, so I know you've been in the Q's for a minute, and we just, getting together. But tell us a little bit about your relationship to the Redhouse prior to you becoming artistic director, because you've been here for a minute.
Right. So I think I did my first show at Redhouse, I think, was in 2011, something like that. And I did a show, just got cast in a show, and I came and did a show. And I really fell in love with the community and fell in love with the organization and fell in love with the other artists and fell in love with the work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I lived in New York City at the time. And for the next 10 years, I would come to Syracuse to do a show at Redhouse, either as a performer or as a director, over the course of that 10 years. And then a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, my predecessor left as artistic director, and an opening came up, and I applied for it and won the position. And so I moved here from New York City about a little over 2.5 years ago. And after 20 years in New York City, and here I am.
So, but you weren't born in New York. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Cleveland.
Okay.
So I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, a suburb of Cleveland called Shaker Heights. I went to university at Ohio University and studied theater performance. And then in 2002, I moved to New York City, and to try to make my dreams come true. And who knew that my journey and my dreams would lead me to Syracuse?
I say Cleveland to me is like what we would be if we grew up, right? It's I feel like it's very similar in terms of ethic and beauty, but also underrated. How would you describe it?
After living here, Syracuse reminds me a lot of Cleveland. Cleveland's a little bit of a bigger city, but just in terms of the demographics, the pathos of the people, and it's very similar.
So I'm not off. Okay, so
you're not off. You're not, and the weather is very similar.
Right. That is what I picked up, and I was like, let me just ask a Cleveland native. So in some ways, this feels like home, even though it's away from home. And you not only study theater, but I understand that you're a vocalist. You had a song on the charts. Talk to me.
Yeah, there was a short period. When I was growing up, you mentioned finding Jesus. I grew up in the church.
Go ahead.
And I learned to sing in the church. I think I was a very, very shy kid, and I'm very much a shy adult. Every Easter you had to go up and give a speech.
Come on, yes.
And I was that kid that would cry when I had to give a speech in front of everybody.
Come on, baby, you could do
right.
Come
exactly,
on, baby.
exactly. And but I was always a performer. I would be in the basement and singing and performing, and it led me to writing and acting. But I think my gift, my God-given gift, is singing. And so there was a period when you're struggling as an actor. I decided, you know what? Let me, my gift is singing. I am going to try being a singer-songwriter. And for about 3 years, I really did that thing. And I was fortunate enough to have a single on the The chart was it went to number one. The chart is called the Hip Hop R&B single sales chart in
Okay.
2006. My
Uh-huh.
management just hustled that single so that it would chart. Um, I remember there was a week when I was number one and Beyonce was number two.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But the chart is a single sales chart.
Yeah.
So you remember back in the day when you can go to the record store and get a
Oh, I
CD
do.
that was just, yes, they
Oh,
don't do
I
that
do.
anymore. And
Listen.
so in 2006, that was really not what people did, but the
Right.
chart still existed.
Okay.
And Beyonce's people weren't hawking her single disc, but
Right.
my people were.
Right.
And so
And what
so
was the
I
name?
got on that.
What was the name of the song?
The song was called Inside Out.
Inside Out.
Just a love song.
Okay. So if I
Mhm.
can find it online somewhere,
Oh yeah, you can go on Spotify or Amazon Music or wherever or Apple.
it's
It'll be there.
everywhere. It's
It's
everywhere.
everywhere.
Okay, that's
Mhm.
good. So let's talk about, so you're here now, you did that. I read somewhere where you kind of put your hands in a whole lot of things before you literally and figuratively find Jesus. Now, the reference to finding Jesus has to do with a show that's coming up, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
But
Yes.
but
Yes.
but I read somewhere where you said you this what you're doing now as artistic director uh, is what you find as your calling at the Red House.
It is. It is. My journey as an artist necessarily involved you know, acting and auditions and writing and producing plays and learning what it is to be an artist
Mm-hmm.
and what it is to be a good artist and at times an excellent artist. But I really feel that someone's life is is best lived with. No one is remembered for what how great they are. How great they are is about what they do for people, and what I want to do is do for people. And for me, that is about creating opportunities for other artists. And
Mm.
because I've been in the arena doing that, I know what it takes to be a great artist. And I think providing that, providing those opportunities for artists in the community is really fulfilling and will leave a lasting legacy. There's a lot of people that are great actors. There are a lot of people that are great singers. There aren't a lot of people that lift other great singers and great actors and great writers up. And so I feel like my calling um, is to lift those people that have those gifts up so that they can give what they have.
Mm. And so you achieved that through directing, I assume.
I achieve it through, well, directing is a part of my artistic outlet.
Mm-hmm.
But really, some of the best things that I do in my job is sending some kid an email and saying, "Hey, would you like to play this role in this production?"
Mm.
That is what is really fulfilling about my day.
And you, from the standpoint of being that kid receiving the email when you got notified that you got the role and what that feels like. And so what you're saying is you want to create, you want your joy is knowing what that does for somebody else.
Absolutely. I remember there's a woman, her name is Alyssa. She's a fashion designer and she got hired at Red House to do wardrobe, assist backstage with wardrobe and stuff. And she's a Black woman and very lovely. And um, and she was very good at it, very good and had a good sense at helping the costume designer with wardrobe and all that stuff. And I remember going up to her one day and say, "Hey, would you come back next season and do wardrobe, on all the shows again?" And she said, "Yes, of course." And then I said, "Except one show. I want you to costume design Godspell." And the joy that she imparted, and she was so excited and grateful and knew that this is something that she really wanted for her life. Seeing that in her is what is lets me know that that's my calling. That is what I do it for, is to give people opportunities like that.
Speaking of Godspell, I guess I got to take this opportunity now. That is the next show at Red House.
So the next show I'm directing is called Misery.
Misery.
The Stephen King book and
Yes,
movie
yes,
has
yes.
been adapted into a play, which we're doing as a subscriber exclusive. So you had to subscribe to the season, and if you subscribe, you could see this production.
Okay.
Then after that, yes, is Godspell, which is our final show of the season. It's an interpretation of the Gospel of Saint Matthew, but told in a modern style, using clowning really to tell the parables in the story. And I have been, I'm sorry, are we still on? Okay.
Yeah, you good.
Yeah. Every time that I try to get away, they pull me back in. I'll be performing in that production.
Okay.
And I don't perform. It is very rare that I perform anymore, but the director asked me to do it. People in the community have been like, "When are we going to see you perform again?" And so I think that, it's a show that I love. I've done before. It's not a role that I've done before, but I'm really excited to hit the stage and tread the board at Redhouse again. And possibly, never say never, but my intention is that it may be the last time that I really, perform a role in a show like that.
All right, so that's a tease. In other words, if you want to see Temar Underwood in his farewell acting performance, you might have
Right.
to now. And then you say never, because that if the
Right.
right thing came along, you might just have to do it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I've been blessed. I'm very picky about the roles that I want. I mean, when you're early in your career, you'll take anything.
Right. Right.
But, as I got older, I only wanted to perform in things that I really, really were special to me, and I felt did justice to who I am as an artist, and did some sort of uplift for the community and for Black people, quite frankly. My thing is always to uh, have Black folks do roles that aren't normally performed by Black folks. I think that's a really important thing to do, and show that human stories can be told by anybody, and bring the Black experience to these stories only enriches them. And so I often would want to choose roles or accept roles that would do that somehow. And I've just been blessed. I've gotten to do that with most of the roles in the canon that I felt like I needed or wanted to do.
And we're not talking about colorblind casting or anything like that, right?
No, not colorblind casting, intentional casting.
Correct. Thank you. Because I wanted the difference between the two, right? We're not just throwing people in roles no matter what. We're intentionally. So, for example, the last show I saw at the Red House was Streetcar Named Desire, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was describe how that story was told in the way that you just described.
Well, so in that production, which I directed, if you know Streetcar, it's Blanche, Stella, and Stanley are the
Yep.
main role.
Yeah.
Blanche and Stella are sisters, and Blanche, moves in, and Stanley is abusive and all of that stuff. And I cast Blanche and Stella as two Black women, because they're sisters. And I think, one, what it does is it makes the play about the sisters
Mm-hmm.
in a way that normally the play is about the conflict between Stanley and Blanche. That's what the the core of it is. And I think by casting Black women in those roles, the play really became about their relationship. These two sisters dealing with this man who is a terror.
Yeah.
And so for me, that wasn't me going into auditions and saying, oh, just anybody that's great can do the role. It's intentional. I'm trying to say something with it. And what you have to say doesn't always have to be a statement, it can be a question. Sometimes I will make a casting decision like that because I want to ask the question, what does it do to this classic story to make this role a Black person, right? Because theater should start conversations.
Yeah.
And if you leave the theater and you think, oh, they cast this as a Black person and that did this to the story, that changed the story in this way, or it didn't change the story at all. So I think I like to ask questions and make statements with those casting choices.
I mean, in my head, I have to follow up and say, so what was the question that you were asking in Streetcar?
Well, the intentional thing was making the story about the sisters. I think if they're two Black women, the story becomes about that relationship.
Okay.
The question is, Streetcar is a known commodity that is very often cast with white people or all Black people, right? That's been done. What does it do when it's just these two characters that are women? How does that affect your relationship to the story? If you're Black, how does that affect your relationship to the story? If you're white, how does that affect your relationship to the story? If you're white and there's these two Black women playing these classic roles that are normally played by white women, does that bother you? And if it bothers you, what does that say about this play? Or what does that say about you that it bothers you? And I want people to mind that question in themselves. Why does it bother me when in my opinion, it doesn't really change the core message of the story that they're Black women, other than a few ways that it shifts the focus. But what does it say about you and the play?
And Stanley is white, so that's also another dynamic in the play as well.
Exactly.
Right.
Right. And that was also intentional because Stanley is a violent, brutish character, and I just was not interested in a Black man playing that. Black men have played that over and over and over and over again, and I didn't want the villain in this story to be a Black man.
Let's end by asking you, where does the Red House then, as an artistic venue, fit into the theater scene of Central New York? You got stage over there. You got some of the national stuff coming in on where does Red House see itself as an institute that's 15 years old or so? What's Red
20.
House? 20 years old now.
20th anniversary.
You do educational outreach, you do community outreach, you do lots of things. What's the role of Red House? 20 years.
The word you said is the word that is the truth, which is community, right? Landmark it brings in national shows,
right?
It doesn't, there are not community artists in those productions or working on those productions. Stage is a big LORT theater, and they do hire some community folks, but for the and they're starting to do more of it. But for the most part, Syracuse Stage is an entity that is a large professional theater that brings in professional artists from outside of Syracuse, other than some community, a few community folks and people that work at the university. Redhouse is the professional theater in Syracuse that is most entrenched in the community. Red House relies on our relationship and our ties to the community to be successful.
Amen. And so finally, you got you said misery for the subscribers, Godspell. I saw an ad. Did you find Jesus yet?
Yes. Well, we're still looking. I think
You still
within the
looking?
next, we're still looking. So we posted an ad to, asking
Yeah.
people to submit for the role. Again, we want to be very intentional about the casting of that role.
Yes.
We don't want Jesus to look like Jesus often looks.
Huh?
We felt we needed to reach outside of the community to find that. And we got almost 400 submissions for it. So it's a lot of people to mine through. But I feel lucky that we have a lot of great candidates, and Jesus will be, a great addition to the cast. And when we land on who it is.
Well, glory to God. I know you'll find Jesus.
Yes.
Now, lastly, you did mention that you grew up in the church. The church folk who listen want to know what denomination.
Mount Moriah Baptist Church.
There you go. All right.
Old school, Reverend Brown, gospel preacher, and could really preach.
All right. Listen, Temar, thank you for dropping by. Tell folk how they can support the Red House.
They can support the Red House by going to the redhouse.org. Visit our social media, like, comment, share. March 11th at noon. Check out Red House for a special announcement about next season.
March 11th at noon. All right.
Yeah.
That's Temar Underwood, Artistic Director of the Redhouse Community Theater here in Syracuse, New York. George Kilpatrick, inspiration for the nation, celebrating people we feel good about.